All right, awesome. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to Startup Boston Week. My name is Hanny. I'm one of the organizers for the event. Uh, I will pull up quickly on my screen um, the events that are going on right now. This one that you're in is hashtag famous, building and maintaining an influencer community around your product. If you ended up in the wrong event, you can switch by going to the agenda tab at the top of your screen. Um, we also have events throughout the week, so definitely check out that agenda tab and see um, what else you'd like to attend between um, tomorrow and Friday. Um, while we let some more people trickle in, just a reminder that we'd love to hear your questions. We have a Q&A tab on the far right of your screen. That's where we ask that you put those, and then um, uh, we'll get to those questions as part of the panel towards the end of the panel. So yeah, definitely feel free to make this as interactive and ask questions of the panelists. Final just housekeeping item is that we have a really cool social media competition going on right now. We have basically pay attention to what the speakers say. And if you post a quote on social media and use the hashtag SBW2021, you'll be entered to win one of 5 $100 gift cards to a Black-owned business in Boston. So without further ado, I will pass this along to our moderator, Kelly.
All right, thank you very much, and welcome to Startup Boston. Today, we'll be talking about building influencer communities, but before we begin, it might be nice for each of our panelists to take a moment and introduce themselves, talking about your company, your role, and the type of community you've built over the years. Trish, if you'd like to start first.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Trish Fontanella. I am the head of community for a company called Simpler. So we are a human-first, machine-enabled customer experience solution that companies like Keen and Steve Madden use. And in that role, I also head up a community called CX Life, which is a private community for customer experience professionals that are growing in their careers. I've been in the startup scale-up space for about 10 years now. Which somehow sounded a little bit better than me saying a decade. Word choice. And I've both worked full-time as well as being a consultant across the board, hardware, software, online, offline, hybrid. And right now we're in, online space, education, agriculture, cryptocurrency, just a bunch of different places. I found that the great community principles and working human to human, I say H to H versus B to B and B to C, a lot of that stuff stays the same. So I'm really excited to be here and learn from these awesome panelists, but also share some things that I've learned along the way as well.
All right, thank you very much, Trish. Farhana?
Hi, everyone. My name is Farhana Cannon. I am the founder of iMedia Exposure. We're the social media experts, so we help brands attract and convert their perfect client online. We help with branding, content creation, helping with marketing and sales funnel creation and planning. So we work with startups to establish brands, speakers, coaches, beauty, fashion brands, restaurants, travel. So a wide variety of different brands, and we really focus on helping brands have a strategic marketing plan and then executing on that, and really making sure that their branding is distinct across all online platforms and really helping them connect with that perfect client and really establishing a community with our individual brands and clients. For our company ourselves, we have a mastermind that meets on Tuesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time weekly. It's called Brand Boutique Elite Mastermind. I also have a podcast called Brand Boutique Elite. So those are the kind of community building platforms that we have internally at iMedia Exposure. And thank you so much for having me on here.
We're happy to have you. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Layla, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Layla Fernandez-Breyer. I am the head of brand and culture at Attention Grace. Attention Grace is the first sustainable personal care brand for women as we age, or for those of us who are not in that age group, for women 50 plus. Our community for us is really about creating openness, and openness about women's health, and especially, our changing needs as we age, and creating a community that women feel that they are not alone, and kind of engenders more openness about the various subjects and the inconvenient truths of aging, and creating a nice support system where we can kind of bounce ideas, knowledge, and support back and forth.
Thank you so much. And lastly, my name is Kelly Navikas. I am the founder and CEO of Carnation Capital, and I'll be moderating this talk, where I mostly help fintech startups, PE firms, VC firms with building their community through marketing and sales help. So without further ado, one last thing. If you would like to tell us a little bit more about yourselves in the comments, including where you work right now, whether you're a founder in C-suite, marketing, growth, sales, junior or more senior in your role, that would be very helpful for us as well. And feel free to throw in questions in the Q&A session as we go forward. And tell us, too, what you would like to learn most through this panel, and we'll try to include that as much as possible. Great. So we've already touched on this a little bit through our intros, but I would like to dig a little deeper into what are the key defining aspects of your community, and more importantly, how did you figure out what those aspects are? Anyone can take on this question.
So for me, our community, we really focus on a lot of different startups and founders, and working with them to create their personal branding as well as establishing the branding around their company. Since I speak on a lot of different stages, and I'm with speakers a lot that are also business coaches and different, with different levels of expertise, a lot of my community and the people I connect with are in that space. So authors, speakers, and they're at these events, and that it was kind of just a natural thing. Me, when I started off 10 years ago trying to grow my business and get more exposure, and it was an easy fit getting up in front of hundreds of people and being like, okay, I'm going to do a little training here. And then the most of the time you're spending with the other speakers in the back of the room, and you guys are supporting each other. And so I really found that was a really fruitful community for me to support. And that's why I created my mastermind around like those people, the founders and the speakers, the educators, the experts in their field. And then with my podcast, I learned so much with just spending time with those people, and I refer clients to them all the time, that I created this podcast sharing their stories and their tips for other people that want to, start their business or looking for inspiration, so that we can it's somewhat referral marketing, but also, supporting the community of growing businesses.
For us, our community is a pretty traditional definition. First and foremost, they are our customers, women who are using Attention Grace products. Outside of that, I think there's a larger movement of people who are interested in destigmatizing women's health. And within that, there's also the menopause movement, which is, steamrolling ahead, much to everyone's delight. And even though we don't necessarily, we don't consider ourselves a menopause brand. Obviously, if you're speaking to women 50 plus, it definitely, there's an overlap in that Venn diagram. So there's also, a group of like-minded brands that are kind of at the forefront of that larger movement. And for us, they are part of who we could consider community as well.
Yeah, and I think so we have a kind of interesting case in that we have an internal and external community. So our internal community, we call them partners, but to not confuse folks, because partners means different things to people, I'll call them customers. So we have our customer community, and then we have the CX Life community. And then for me, the definition of community, because I get super precious about some of these terms, is community is many to many versus an audience, which is one to many. So before I came on to at Simpler, they said they had a community, and I was like, that's awesome. And it turns out they just had a newsletter. So we had to create a space for us to connect with customers, but also for them to connect with each other, because that's where the scaling happens in community. And so with customer communities, for me, it's all about so I think all community builders have like a second superpower. Mine is customer experience. And I think it's all about making your customers the heroes. So what can you do, depending on who they are and who you're interacting with, to make them awesome? I mean, part of it's educating them on product and helping them with product. But if there's someone within an organization, we like to celebrate when people get promotions. We have people that are outside, and like our CEO sends their manager like, congrats on elevating this person. They're really awesome for us to work with. They must be really amazing for you to work with. Getting speaking gigs for them and things that they're really excited about. So not just helping them with the product, but helping them as professionals and making them a hero in their industry and with the product. And then the differentiator for CX Life, which is our external community that's open to everybody, is being a really trusted resource. So even though we're in the space, much maybe people should disagree in the organization, I talk about competitors because I don't think everybody should be our customer, depending on what they're working on. We also, make sure they have mentorship, and if they have questions, I go out and find resources. And another piece for us is diversity. In the customer experience space, if you look at a lot of different conferences, there is a lot of let's just say homogenous speakers talking about things that are a little bit dated. And so for us, it's making sure that, and we'll probably hear movement, I think, and we're all working in spaces where there's like movements, but moving for hearing different voices of different people from different backgrounds, amplifying that, and making sure that people have access to not only the like old ways of doing things, but being innovative and making sure that they have new tools as well that they're being exposed to.
I love that, Trish. I think it's such a nice manifestation of what you said in the beginning of human to human. I think going the extra mile to create relationships and have that personal interaction is lovely, and it really does stand out and create genuine community versus just marketing terms community.
Yeah, I think I especially for anyone I think a lot of these folks are working at startups, you're going to have to do a lot of community things that are like not scalable. Like I know I don't want to like promote hustle culture or anything like that. But I remember one of my first startups, I remember our first year, taking the 11 p.m. on a Friday night, support call because they had sent something to their manager, and for them, we're on East Coast, they're in another time zone. They're like, oh, it's still like work day for me. But there's a lot of things that, you can do. I used to send pies to community members. That starts getting out of hand budget wise. But, thinking about as you're building, again, startups, like building these companies, getting to know those first people, in addition, not just the paying customers, the people that are in the space that can amplify and be ambassadors for you it's really tough, and trying to make time, especially if I know there's founders here and they're like, when do I do that? And it's like, you just have to find time to do some of those like unscalable things at the beginning.
Thank you so much, Trish. And that sort of leads in well into our next question. And as you said, there's probably quite a number of founders that are tuning in right now. So what are some of the strategies that you guys used early on in your companies to turn your customers into influencers, and more specifically, more scalable strategies, right, that early founders could use?
So one of the things that we do with, for us as well as with our clients, we'll find micro influencers that are already advocates of the brand. Their following is people that are very like-minded, and we'll do like photo shoots. So they'll be the models in our photo shoots. We will create content and have them, be the model in it. They can use the content for their blogs and their social media and their posts. And then we create a contest around that so that, people can post something and talk about it once, and then they're posting a million things about other things. And you see it and you're like, oh, that's cool. And then you're over it. And so when we create a contest, they're actually talking about this brand multiple times, making them a brand ambassador. So they have some sort of team feeling with the brand. And then also doing affiliate commission. So anytime that they sell something, they're making money, giving them incentives. There are the influencers that require a fee to actually promote you or a brand. And then there's some that will do it for commission, and there's some that will do it for free products. And so I think playing around, depending on what stage of business you're at, playing around with your budget and utilizing micro influencers that have the listening of your exact perfect target demographic is important when you're starting, especially.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Farhana. I do want to talk a little bit more specifically about what you're doing at your firm. You help other companies to build their brand and community. One of the questions I have is really sort of a chicken and egg question, which comes first, building the brand or finding the community, right? Does building the brand attract the community, or do you find who the community is and build the brand around them? What's worked for you and what's worked for your clients in the past?
So I would say it's, building and establishing that brand, but also acknowledging who you're going to serve. So whenever we're doing a branding session for clients, we want to know what they're offering, what problems they're solving, and creating that aesthetic and that messaging and that storyline around that. But then also looking at who you're serving and what they would like. It could work for this thing, but if you're trying to serve this market and your messaging and your aesthetic is not landing with those people, then you're doing something wrong. So in the terms of community, yes, maybe defining who that community is that you're serving, but not gathering. We don't gather the community and then create the brand. We create the brands in terms of knowing who that community is that we want to serve, and then inviting them into something that suits their needs. I think that, companies that have their branding all over the place, or they don't have a clear brand message, people don't know how to get behind them and really stick to them or follow them or understand what they're doing. There's people that will connect or be like, oh, we need your help. And I'm like, I have no clue what you do. I don't really understand your website. I don't really understand your social media. Because I'll do research whenever anyone messages me and says oh, I want your help. I'll go and try to figure it out. And if I can't figure it out and I'm really trying, a community isn't going to be able to understand or get it if you're not crystal clear about what it is that you're serving and how you can serve them.
Great. Thank you so much, Farhana. Let's open up the conversation a little bit more. When it comes to the three of you, what were the expectations you had in the beginning about building your community? And how did they change or evolve as you learned more about who you were serving?
It was interesting for us. So obviously, our launch collection is a collection of products, liners, pads, briefs, wipes for bladder leakage. Not something that is rarely talked about, despite the fact that 1 in 3 adult women experiences bladder leakage at some point in their life. And that's a lot. It's a lot, but clearly it's incredibly stigmatized. And so for us, it was interesting. We had customers who were sending us rave reviews about products. Ours is the first female founded brand in what is otherwise an incredibly stale space. I think you think of incontinence, you think of some of the big box brands that so many women, and we don't blame them, just didn't see themselves in those brands. So we were definitely offering something different, and it was attractive to many women because for the first time they felt, there was this wonderful founder market fit, as we say in the biz. But, female founded, two women, in their midlife, starting this brand from personal experience. But we had great customers and wonderful reviews, but that, to Trisha's point, that's not necessarily community yet. And for us, in such a highly stigmatized space, part of what we had to do in the first step was to put women's reviews, their stories out there. Of course, not breaching any confidence, but if there was a great review, to put it out there and to lead by example in terms of leading with openness. And it was wonderful to see that the more we put customer testimonials out there, the more women felt excited to and almost permission to engage and be a part of the community. So in some ways, we kind of joke that we had to make our community visible before it was ever official. And then since then, once you have more, kind of genuine engagement, then we had time to, launch a private Facebook group and have like an inner circle of customers, et cetera. And really give women a seat at the table. I think that's a huge part of our pretty empathetic for us, by us model, is that not only, do our founders have that perfect, founder market fit, but also that all of our customers help inform where we go next, help give feedback that helps close the loop and help us continue to have that that relationship that drives the business.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this a little bit when I joined. There wasn't totally a community. There was more of a newsletter, and the page actually read a little bit too. Like, I know there a lot of private communities, you want to have folks that come together around certain things, but they had revenue on there as like one of the reasons to join. So there's a lot of stuff we ended up taking off because it's like this. And this will speak to some, and there's probably some folks out there in B2B world. When you get that granular, people start to feel like they're part of a lead gen something if you keep asking all those questions. And so I stripped a lot of that away, and it was putting in pure gives and making sure, like Layla mentioned, you have to get those first testimonials of some sort. And sometimes people get a little bit skittish about testimonials. So not necessarily a hack, but getting people to write content for you. And if they say something nice about your brand, saying, hey, I love this piece of content that showed off your expertise, that talked about our brand. Would you mind if I took, a chunk of this out of the blog post for usage or something like that? But I think that the making sure, and this isn't always possible depending how small your team is, but making sure the person that has the community hat or that is working community is not the person that is also always asking for things. Like, there has to be someone that has a little bit of a halo that when I send an email, people are going to open it. But sometimes they may not open the sales emails, and I can help where I can. But with community, people need to know that you're there and for them. And for me, I always say, again, founders don't always love to hear this, but I'm like, it's people first, product second, because that is my job. And there are other people that are helping people, customer success or biz dev or sales, helping people with the product. For me, I focus on the people, and building up that social capital is so important. One, in general for the industry, but also with the product as well. So we've definitely moved towards, hey, if anything happens in CX Life or community, it's pure give. And if there needs to be an ask, I can kind of help and say like, hey, I've been talking to this person. Here's a good way to talk about it. But I'm generally not the person that's asking them for a referral or for something else, or someone else that's doing that, and making sure those streams are a little bit different so that people know who to go to for that kind of stuff. But we went from, again, being give to you have to have this amount of agents, you have to be making this amount of money per year, and people are like, even I was like, this feels a little bit too much like a sales cycle. So making sure that those intentions feel different to people is important with community.
Yeah, Trish, so it seems like things were very different at Simpler before you joined. And when you were working with building community, not only were there sort of changes in how you're communicating with your potential community, but also sort of internal changes at the company too. How was it sort of working internally, right, to be able to affect the changes that you wanted in order to change, say, the culture or change how every individual just talks about your product too?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I love this company so much. Like drank the Kool-Aid, tattoo on my forehead. Love this company, and I think that one of the issues is not a lot of people have had either worked with community or worked with successful communities before. So that was one of the shifts. But when I talked to, because I joined during the pandemic, and I'd been consulting and doing community CX for 3 years. Thought 2020 was going to be my year to expand and do other things. And I actually tried to convince them not to hire me, because when I initially saw that landing page with all those like criteria of join the community, I'm like, if I come in, I'm redoing this whole page, and we're going to change a lot of the things, and sales folks are not going to be allowed in the community. Like, all these things are going to change. And I had like an hour-long conversation. The CMO brought me in, and I had an hour long with the CEO. I'm like, this is going to take a little bit to build. I want to change things. If you want to do it this way, like, more power to you. I think what you're doing is amazing, but please don't hire me to do growth marketing or something. Like, that is different. And they're really amazing, incredible professionals that are amazing growth marketers that you should go to. I'm like I'm getting to know everybody. I'm like getting to know people's babies' names and their dogs' names and doing all this kind of stuff. So it is a little bit tough, I think, especially with startups. But also, I was at an early stage startup where I was the first hire outside the founders, because it was a signal to our customers and our potential community, like, we are keeping you. Other brands say customer first, but like, our first hire was a community manager. Like, we are really keeping you first. So it can be a little bit of an uphill battle, especially because, unlike some other traditional marketing roles, there are some like kind of squishy things that are, especially I think in B2B community, because people aren't necessarily, and Layla probably feels this too, like, people aren't screaming from the rooftops that they're using the product necessarily. And so you have to look at internal data. You have to be talking to people constantly. There isn't this like social media wave, because some people can't talk about some of the products they're using. For Layla, it's like personal reasons, and for business, it's like you just contractually can't talk about it. So there's a lot of work that goes into it, and the swell over time can do really well. There's a lot of communities out there. Airbnb had community. I think David Spinks, who heads up CMX, like, counted when they went public, the mention of community like 90 times or something in their public letter. So there are people that, like, it took them a long time to build, but if you start with community, it can do so many amazing things. But yeah, internally, conversations, especially if there aren't like some marketers that have ever worked with community, or it's mostly a tech company, they're like, I don't know, why do I get to know people? But there are things that just people tell me that they don't tell anybody, that, like, even customer success folks. Like, it's always that last 5 minutes of the call of like, so I didn't want to tell anyone to like hurt their feelings, but XYZ thing about the product. And like, I have the community hat as like the friend hat, far above any other role. And so it's so important for product, for CX, to have someone that is doing community. But it can be, I think, with founders and with executives that haven't experienced community, it can be a little bit of a tough sell.
Absolutely. So we've already talked a little bit about finding our target community, right? Now let's start getting into the more of the practicalities of turning our customers into our community and turning them into influencers. Already started touching on this a little bit, each speaker, but what channels have you used to grow and maintain your community so far? We'll talk about social media in a second, but it also seems like there's some interesting, maybe unconventional methods that we've used for community building that are not just, TikTok or Facebook or Twitter. So what methods have you used, or what programs have you used? Again, this can also include, say, if you're using blogging, if you're using any sort of affiliate or agency programs or know about them, or even made choices not to use those programs too, that could also be helpful for our audience.
Well, I think ours is definitely a community that thrives on education, and the more you know about your own health and wellness. And a slight tangent, but for us, we found out at some point, we're a young brand. We launched in 2020, and we found out the statistic that it takes women on average 6 years to see a medical professional about their bladder leaks. 6 years. I mean, that's heartbreaking, right? And there's so much stigma that women don't even feel comfortable or empowered, or that it's worthwhile to bring up something, that's so common but not normal. You know what I mean? To their own healthcare providers. And so that was like a big aha for us. I know it sounds funny for an incontinence brand to be trying to cure women of incontinence, but to be honest, that's what part of what we're doing. So we dove into creating a resource library, and again, to Trisha's point about being a trusted resource, and part of our mission for our community was to let women know that, yes, we're here to provide a better product than what exists on the market now, cleaner, greener, no harsh chemicals against your skin, way more effective at keeping you drier. But also, quite frankly, it doesn't have to be this way. There is a better way, yes, product wise, but also there's just wholesale is a better way. Connecting women with urologists, urogynecologists, acupuncturists, pelvic floor therapists, really looking at wellness at a more holistic sense, and connecting women to find a specialist near them, but also, compiling a tome of research, some written by our own medical advisors and some linking to others' information to just better understand and answer some of the questions that a lot of women don't normally feel comfortable asking of their healthcare provider. And as part of that, we launched a special spotlight series where, again, it's like not just providing the information, but kind of teasing out the humanness of it. I think as one of our specialists said, that a lot of women just kind of clam up, humans, but especially women clam up and kind of get close-lipped. Is that the term? Tight-lipped? I don't know. And don't want to say anything in front of, the white coat of their healthcare professional. And the Specialist Spotlight series does a simple Q&A with various specialists whose job it is every day to work with women, and help them with their incontinence and other changing needs. And it's been wildly successful and engaging and interesting for women to learn more about the condition that they have, be connected with specialists, and then to go one step further and almost demystify the specialist interaction by seeing a much more human side of the person who, is a proxy for whomever they're hopefully going to meet and take their next steps with.
I think that's awesome that even though you guys are providing a tool for them to use, but you're also supporting them with kind of these issues and providing them with other resources so that they don't have this as an issue. And I think that that's super cool, because most brands would be like, oh no, well, if we cure them, then they won't need to buy our things. And so I love that. And I feel like a lot of the brands that I work with, they create groups where, they provide coaching or a support group or something like that, so people can feel heard, share what they're up to, and get the support from their peers as well as like a brand. And I think that people like that. It's such a different concept than if you were thinking about 20 years ago when it was like, buy this thing, that's all. Now, I think a lot of brands are seeing building a community and supporting people, and not just selling your product, but kind of utilizing and leveraging things that would support them holistically, and maybe partnering with other brands that are kind of aligned with the same messaging. And I think that that's like super impactful, because we want to feel like we're a part of something. And even with this pandemic, we were all so isolated, and some people are still very isolated. And to feel like, brands, yes, they might be selling you something, but they get it. They get you. They get what your needs are. And even if your needs isn't just their thing, like, they're providing you with this place to go to support you in those needs. So I really love that, like, you guys are doing that. That's like really nice to hear.
Thanks for saying that, Farhan. Yeah, it's been really meaningful, not just for us, as part of the brand team, but for our community, especially women 50 plus. I think a lot of the things that they love about our brand, and I love about our brand, we love about our brand, I have to say, in many ways, we just consider table stakes. Quality customer experience and customer service, and seeing your customer as like a full, multi-dimensional woman, a protagonist of their own life, versus just a customer. Yeah, it's gone over really well. It's gone over really well.
Yeah, during the pandemic, I created my mastermind group, and it was something that I had wanted to do prior to it. It was like an item that I was going to get around to doing. And obviously, people were at home. So I was like, okay, like, let's do this. And I'm a big networker. So I'm like, oh, you have to meet this person and this person. And instead of, sending those millions of emails connecting people, I'm like, how about you come Tuesday at noon, log in, and I need you to meet this person. And for me, it's like so fulfilling, because I have so many, like, my clients are on there, like random people that I meet that are just like cool business owners that we bounce ideas off of each other. And literally every single person in the group has done some sort of deal with another person in the group, or has gotten a referral for a person in the group. And so, like, for me, like, my clients are all business owners, or the marketing director, or, that person that's my liaison in their company, and having them all come in and kind of grow and talk about themselves. And I'll give tips to people, and other people will invite people, and then it just kind of becomes like a funnel for me. But I really created it so that I could collect all of the people and help them connect with other people. And it's just really fun to like see it as kind of creating collaborations and supporting one another in a new way of doing that. Whereas, before I'd be like, oh, come to this networking event. Literally now on my mastermind, I have people from every single, like, all over the United States that are on there. I've had people like log in from Europe, not so much like Asia because the time difference is too much, but it's just nice to see people from like all around the world come together and be able to feel like there's forums. And I think that that's like really, people are seeing that as a possibility for their brand and building that community.
I love that. Thank you so much. And before we start talking about social media, I just love this theme between all three of you about how your companies are so focused on giving, and how in return focusing on what you can provide for your customers, how you can provide actual value for your customers through your community, still manages to give back, right? And that seems to be, something people can take away from this event. Lastly, let's talk about social media before we move on to our Q&A session, because we are starting to get closer towards the end here. In terms of social media, how do you use it? What channels do you use, right? And how important is social media for building your community?
So we focus, a lot on social media, like that we manage social media for clients. And one of the key components is actually engagement and reaching out to people and starting conversations and not just being like, hey, buy this thing, but really like engaging and talking to them and building relationships. And it's interesting because people think like, oh, I'm going to just post things on social media and I'm going to get a ton of followers. And that's really just not how it works. So you guys are like shaking your head because you definitely know. And the way to grow is to actually engage with people, talk to them, reply to them, their posts, like really engage so that you show up as something. And even if it's a large brand, you can, like, my team literally does engagement on Instagram and LinkedIn for all of the clients that we work with. And we will build these relationships with people and invite them to free things or provide them with free offers, because nobody wants to be like sold to, like, hey, buy this thing. It's awkward. So we try to like build the community of each brand by offering something of value for free so that people can like learn a little bit more. But after like engaging with them and talking to them and like, making sure that person is actually attentive or interested in responding to the brand.
Yeah, for me, LinkedIn and Twitter are kind of the main social media platforms. Again, we're in B2B versus B2C, so it's a little bit different there. For LinkedIn, it's mostly my engagement with community members. So I've built a LinkedIn list of community members that I've seen be really active on LinkedIn. And I'll go in there and make sure that I'm replying and not even talking about the company, although you can see the company in that by my header, and just saying, people need recommendations on things. People, I had a community member that shared this like quote that's like, tell people that you appreciate them. And I was like, I just want to let you know I appreciate you. And I like sent a little heart. So I use that to celebrate people, to talk about them, because I know that on LinkedIn, their colleagues are going to see it, their boss is going to see it. And if they're sharing something that's great, that's pertinent to me and my interests, I make sure I amplify it. I don't always like share it on my personal account, but I'll react to it and put a comment because I know that elevates things. And then with Twitter, I actually recently stepped back from doing social for the brand. But when I was doing more community work on social, one of the like free and social, I think, is a really good thing to use for startups because a lot of them are free. I mean, you can pay for other things, but it's a good place to start is finding out relevant hashtags that people are actually posting to, and where it makes sense. So for us, CX is one of them. But in Europe, they sometimes use CUST-EXP. And so depending on what we're talking about, knowing which hashtag to use is important. And then a fun thing I used to do, not for this brand, but a few startups ago, I worked for a video messaging company, and I would send quick videos to people just by searching things. So I would go to a regular Twitter search and type in birthday and see which of our Twitter followers were celebrating a birthday, an anniversary. I would type bad day and send them either a DM or a message. There was one person who was following us and he didn't have any of this information in his bio and was like, I'm having a horrible day. And I sent him a quick video. I think I'd just come in from a run or something. So I was like, didn't do anything. I was like, oh, this person's having bad. And let me do a quick video. And I sang like, don't worry about a thing, and sang it like kind of like weird to try and make the person laugh. And I remember like a couple weeks later, I was doing a demo and this guy in a suit comes up, and again, pre-pandemic, I want to caveat this. Suit comes up and is like, hi, are you the person that does social media for this feed? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, do you mind if I hug you? And I was like, can I have some context first? And he's like, I posted that I had a really bad day and I don't think you knew who I was. And your video made me smile, and I'm the managing director for this company. And he actually ended up sponsoring a bunch of events for us. And so there are those moments where like that, there's the payoff there. But if people come to your feed and they're like, oh, this person, whoever is on this feed, they're human. They're not doing like these we had super produced videos, but we had some of these like casual videos as well. But if they see that they can interact with you and they're going to get a human reaction and connect with you, that is a company I'm going to follow, versus if I just go to a feed and everything is a product update. It's like, okay, well, I get the email, so why would I follow them on social? There needs to be a little bit of something there, and there needs to be some sign of a human responding to things if I have questions or even just want to like talk about random stuff. So I found that's a really good place to just type in some keywords, get into some conversations, don't be salesy, be helpful like everybody else is talking about. And those are the ways that people start kind of connecting with you on social.
I think I'd add one thing. And first of all, that's an amazing story. And next time I have a bad day, I'm going to find you on Twitter. But it's funny. I'll throw this out there as an unexpected, at least for me, kind of definition of community on social media. Of course, I think we think of social media, or at least I generally do, in terms of the organic social media, like the account that you're creating, what you're putting out there, who's engaging, how big is your audience. But again, with a brand like ours, and very proud of our small but mighty community. But to be totally honest, some of our paid social gets way more views than, not some, all of our paid social gets way more views than our organic posts. And it's funny, again, like kind of creating a safe space for people to engage. Our engagement is really high on our paid social. And it's because it's obviously it's a topic that really is very emotional for women. It's either really making your life inconvenient and can sometimes inhibit you from social activities and affects your confidence and thus sometimes personality and how the world perceives you and how comfortable you feel going out in the world. With the flip side of receiving an ad that that anybody else who's seeing this also fits a certain demographic, and you kind of know it's almost extra safe space. And we've been really, I personally, speak for myself, have been really surprised how much engagement there is on our ads compared to our own organic. People, it's nice. People still support and love our shows of like personality and brand through our own organic social. But I think how we react to and engage with women who are commenting on our paid social has been an unexpected but really powerful way of extending the community and extending our social engagement in an aspect of social that I didn't quite expect at first.
Thank you both so much. We have just about 10 minutes remaining, so we're going to move over to the Q&A section of the panel. Looks like a few people have already given us a couple of questions, but if you're tuning in now, feel free to continue to add to the Q&A. But first, we'll start with Alaska Lamb. Alaska asks, how do y'all recommend quickly growing authentic followers on social media? Focus on authentic.
So it depends on what platform you're talking about. If you're talking about Instagram is one of the platforms that you can grow your followers the quickest. So it's doing that manual engagement. So looking up, like-minded people, looking up hashtags that are relevant to your business, and then engaging with those people. Also, a little hack is that if you are posting something, so say you're posting and it's going out at noon, then from 11:30 to 12:30, doing that engagement for that hour around that. So people are now like seeing that you're posting and on their page, maybe they're checking the comments and they're on Instagram and seeing your page and looking at your page when that post goes out. it will now kind of like show up on their feed because you just engaged with them. They just checked out your page. And then, after you have posted in that period of time too, same thing, you've just posted. So now they're going to go to your page, and generally if they like what they see, people will like the last post that you posted. So that's like one little quick Instagram hack.
Yeah, I would say for startups, again, going towards the free route of things is ecosystem building. So doing, the engagement is really great, but also, especially if you don't have a budget, making sure that you have a persona. And I think the cool part about community and doing customer experience interviews is asking people, like, what are the other problems that you're having? What are the other tools that you're using? Cool. And then going to those different companies, brands, et cetera, and saying, hey, do you want to do some blog shares or exchanges? Do you want to do some cross posts? And I found that especially if you're just starting out, because people, don't think you're as nefarious, I guess, and you're not going to like steal audience members or anything. But finding people that fit within the ecosystem of what you're building, are not direct competitors, and building relationships for them. And I found doing co-webinars, doing co-events, sharing blog posts, but getting people to say, like, I'm going to be your cheerleader. We need some help over here? In addition to all the engagement that we've talked about, is really helpful too.
All right, thank you both. Next question we have is from Jennifer Zoga. You all shared how important deep research is to the work that you do. What are the best research resources that you can recommend?
For us, having medical advisors as part of our team is invaluable. And so they are often our first stop for getting, more information or greater insight in the health care aspect of what we do. Outside of that, I mean, honestly, some of the best research we have, and if you want to use that, is the insights that we have from our own community. So keeping your ear to the ground, taking the time to listen to the long-winded stories of our customers who call in, write in, etc. That insight is invaluable. It really is. Your customer, will tell you. If you listen, they will tell you, what they want, what problems they're having. And if you're willing to listen, that can really help you better define your roadmap moving forward. And then last but not least is, we're just like anybody else. How does anybody research? Like the internet? Like, I mean, the crazy thing is, like, we do a lot of research that, like, just total layman's, like, best research, and reaching out through our network of, I think perhaps this has always been the case, but I'm just so especially recently inspired by, the whole, it's more than women supporting women is more than just the hashtag. And like, it's wonderful, like, to Farhana's point about women connecting each other to other people. We've been connected to some wonderful subject matter experts. We've been able to really just weigh in and shed light on topics that are really of interest to ourselves as a brand and to our communities. So our customers, people that we're networking with, and then good old fashioned roll up your sleeves, and our medical advisors.
And then another way too, with like that whole community thing, there's a million Facebook groups that are in different cities that have, it could be like a Boston-based group that is one subject, and then you can find that same subject group in Miami or DC or Atlanta. And so there's all of these different Facebook groups that already have communities. They're free to join. And I feel like people are open to supporting. And if you have a question, or if you're like, hey, I want to do this in my business, what do you guys think? People love to just chime in.
Great, thank you so much. We have one more question in the Q&A list, which is a little bit specific. It talks about, can you further explain LinkedIn lists, which I believe is from the LinkedIn Sales Navigator, if anyone has experience with that, or in general, just talking more about customer segmentation and how segmentation works in your communities too.
Yeah, I was just going to say I use LinkedIn lists and then I essentially name them community members, mentors, and then just spend time following companies. I think it's a really good, for like kind of the bare minimum of Sales Navigator, I think it's a really great thing to invest in, to keep in touch, keep watch on competitors, but also keep watch on companies that you're looking to connect with, and having specific lists on people that you want to reach out to. But that was my main. I use like the bare minimum of LinkedIn lists, and I think it's super helpful.
I segment lists by places where people are too, because I speak at a lot of different live events and we'll do workshops. And so I'll segment it by like business owners in this area, like Atlanta. And then if we plan something in Atlanta, we'll then go and be like, oh, hey, like, remember meeting you? We'd love to connect when we're in Atlanta. This is what we're doing. So I do it by city, and then I do it by industry too. So like if we're doing a workshop, or one of my clients is doing a workshop that's targeted to a specific industry, then we'll go and like reach out to people and be like, oh, here's this thing for, salons, or here's this thing for authors. So we kind of do it by like industry and location.
All right, so we have a couple more minutes, so I think I can squeeze in at least one more question. As we're getting towards the end of the panel, why don't we try to take a look forward, right? What do you guys think are some of the trends to watch for in the upcoming year when it comes to technology or media in supporting your work and community building?
I think, the virtual space is going to, having those communities in virtual spaces, having membership groups, having, if somebody buys a product or a service, having some sort of free community that you can join to be a part of, to stay in the conversation around that. More and more that is kind of becoming a thing, and people are looking for that. So I think having a quality community that's actually serving your customers and providing value. So having real valuable things. So some of you ladies were talking about the different speakers and things and the experts that you were bringing into the communities. I think that kind of is something powerful.
Yeah, I feel like automation feels like a little bit of a sacrilege kind of term with community after all the things we said about connecting and human to human. But making sure that, several years ago, everyone's like, oh my gosh, the computers are going to take our jobs and AI and, all this is going to happen. I think it's yes and. So there needs to be things that are automated to make things that are helpful to you, and you have to figure out what those things are. And then also making sure that there's a human element, because people want to connect with humans. And then 2022 events in person things, actual events in person. I know there's a lot of folks who are saying we're going to be virtual forever, and I do not think that at all. I think people do want to see humans. They want to have serendipitous moments where they can connect with people. There's a lot of ladies in this call. I've had so many valuable conversations in the bathroom at a conference. So I think making space for trying to think again, 2022, some in-person events. But yeah, there are things that I think will be helpful to automate in community, but always making sure that there's a human element as well.
All right, thank you so much, Trish. In that case, so we're all out of time. Thank you so much for our speakers for coming to chat about building their communities, and of course for all of our viewers for tuning in. Of course, you can look on our individual profiles on Goldcast, or also on the SBW social media if you're curious about any of the speakers here today. And of course, in terms of building community, we'd all love to connect with you, I'm sure. Until then, I hope you enjoy the rest of Boston Startup Week.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, guys. I look forward to connecting with you all.
Me too.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. And yeah, really appreciate your time, speakers and attendees.